With the overdress era of Vanguard coming to an end, I think this is the perfect time to outline the necessary changes to be made for the next series, Vanguard DivineZ. Don't freak out, this is not a reboot. It is just like when the original series moved to the G era. It allows the design team to make the necessary changes and add new and exciting mechanics to the game. Let's see how many of these points Bushiroad will talk about during the Bushiroad strategy presentation in December. This is not part of the list, but I just want to include that if no new cards are going to be added for V Premium, I say it's about time that they at least address it in some way. There's nothing wrong with retiring a past format. Just look at Yu-Gi-Oh! There are multiple Time Wizard formats, such as GOAT and Edison, that are still beloved by a smaller player base, that can be side events for regionals, and from time to time they can offer a bigger tournament. And it's not like these cards will just be unplayable forever. If Vanguard releases the right cards in Standard, these cards may be used in Premium in the future. Let's just get this first point out of the way. It's time to ban Overtriggers. I'll give it to you that it was awkward to ban these in the middle of a season and also when your series was called Overdress, but now that it's over, you have to address this major issue that everybody is complaining about. I can't stop you from making this game not competitive, but even in party games, I don't think anyone is happy when there is just an obvious overpowered mechanic that ruins the fun. There can be a time jump or some plot that makes it so that you can't use these cards. I don't care what the reasons are, but please. It's been 2 years and this is the perfect time to eliminate them. Let's move on. Moving on to the second issue, set design. First, promos. So many of the promos should have been part of the sets. Many decks were just bad and felt incomplete until they patched things up with promos. DPTO5 introduced 5 new Craycross epic decks. All of them had exciting concepts, but when you actually sit down and start testing them, they were all missing something. Remember how we had to run meteors just to make Eva kinda work? And what did Bushi do about it? Well, they made all these decks very viable very quickly by giving them a very relevant supporting card each. Were those cards in DPTO 6? Nope, they were all shop promos and they were extremely hard to grind for. It's as if the company knew these decks were going to be bad and forcing players to get these promos. It's like providing a good base game but locking all the necessary cards behind DLCs. Yeah, that's a topic for another day. Yes, I know why promos are promos, to incentivize people to go to locals and tournaments. But there are other ways to also achieve this, by reprinting highly sought after cards or giving alter arts to usable cards. I'm gonna be honest, even if they just put the congratulations stamps on expensive cards, I'll rush to locals in a heartbeat. There are so many exclusive ways that cards can be obtained, such as in magazines and mangas, that it feels very chaotic. And it feels like, quite frankly, Bushi is using the loyalty of the player base in a negative way. They know that these cards are good, and they want to sell the mangas, so why not force you to buy the mangas to get the cards? Even the rarity distribution is a big problem. I didn't agree with the move from 10 triple per set to 15. On paper, it may seem like this gives Bushi more room to support more decks at once, but in reality, it just means that more decks that could have gotten budget upgrades are now more expensive because they are harder to pull. So many of the doubles and even triples could have been downshifted to rares or commons, so that the ratios of holos to non-holos don't look so predatory. The next problem I want to bring up is card design. I actually think card design is more on point recently. With all the generic cards being printed, while not all of them are super great, it at least makes you think whether to include them or not. And that's good card design. Decks shouldn't build themselves. It should be rewarding to the players for coming up with unique builds and cards that work off of each other. With the limitation of just 1 blitz order per turn, there just aren't enough defensive options. Rather than having 10 cards per set that says if so and so is on the board get plus 5k, let's instead focus on more unique cards so players can have more freedom in deck building. How would I fix the issue of not having enough defensive options? I revert back to the shield powers of the V series, where Grey Ones had 10k shield and heal triggers had 20. Next, I look into making blitz orders not once per turn. I think this will make for a more interactive game rather than both players just swinging at Vanguard every turn. Now let's talk about IPs. There's no denying that collabs bring people into the game. And I think we're in an era where collabs are just inevitable, but it's how they're executed that I want to talk about. I think incorporating them into sets is a way better idea than the collabs having their own sets. That way we don't go through super dry reveal seasons and a set release lineup where the majority of the player base just don't care. It also doesn't help that there has been so many instances when a collab deck has dominated the meta. Do you really want somebody else's IP to be representing your game? I know they don't really take the other regions into consideration, but it is really annoying when everyone other than the players from Japan is playing with half the card pool because none of these decks are getting imported. Remember when we were supposed to get Records of Ragnarok at the same time as Japan? Yep, that didn't happen. I would much rather for collab cards to be reskins of existing cards. I'm sorry, but when you have so many anime screenshots with walls of text on it, I just don't feel like reading them. The last point I want to talk about is one of my personal gripes. One of the worst design decisions in my opinion is making lyrical its own thing. Not only is it boring to have just lyrical card reveals for a month straight, it also doesn't make sense from a power level standpoint. Since lyrical sets are only releasing twice per year, in order for it to be at the same power level as the other nations, it either needs to play catch up, suddenly making past cards irrelevant altogether, or exceed the current power level so that when the next couple of sets roll around, lyrical will still be relevant. Neither of this is great nor healthy for the game. If you remember about a year ago when every nation was playing with effect triggers, lyrical had to wait an extra couple of months just to get them from the next set. So those are the main issues I'm hoping Vanguard DivineZ will fix. Obviously, there are a lot more problems I wish Bushiroad would address, such as tournament structure, new player experience, and a better online system. However, I think those are more controversial, and a lot of the reasons that these problems can't be solved immediately is because of money. Renting venues for longer duration costs a lot more, and making an online simulation that is up to date with the TCG might take away card sales. But fixing the mechanics and design of sets can be improved swiftly, and not only will the existing player base be happier, more people will be tempted to try the game out from how good the reception will be from these changes.